The body is designed to move. The body is not designed to sit still. The longer you sit still in one position, the more uncomfortable you start to get, and naturally your body will want to shift. That's one of the reasons why we shift and move when we're asleep. We toss and turn in the middle of the night. It's because our body's getting uncomfortable in that position and it wants the next one. Our tissues are designed to move. Our mood, our energy, everything will be healthier if we can just move a little bit more.
Cool. Dr. Andrew Fix.
What's going on?
Thank you for having us here at the Physio Room and for the warm welcome.
Appreciate you coming.
Absolutely. So, we've been in contact for almost 2 years now.
Yeah, time flies.
We did a podcast with you. Our first podcast ever as Movemate, sharing our story, was on the Code podcast. Yeah. So you gave us that platform and we're very grateful for that. Today, I really want to dive in and learn a little bit about your journey. Learn about some of your perspectives around movement, around recovery from injury.
Yeah.
It'd be great to also get your perspective on Movemate and also curious about what the future looks like for Physio Room, for the Code podcast. But maybe we'll take many steps back and go back to you studied exercise science in undergrad, and then you went on to do your doctorate in physical therapy.
Yeah. Yep.
And so what was the inspiration behind going down this path?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I appreciate you guys coming over here. And I don't remember exactly what episode number it was on the Code, but I do remember it was a great conversation. It was one of the very few, or especially one of the first ones, with someone that's not here in the United States. So that was pretty awesome to be across the border doing that.
That's good to know.
But yeah, what honestly got me kind of interested in the exercise science and going down the path of physical therapy school was when I was in 8th grade, I think it was, in football practice. I had my first actual injury, just running. It wasn't a contact injury or anything. And I had a little hip injury. And that was my first time going into physical therapy as a patient, right? Or as a client. And I had to go for, a few weeks. And in about a month, I was pretty much healed up and ready to return to playing. So that was 8th grade. And then when I was in high school, I had the experience of watching my dad go through his own rehab journey. He had his rotator cuff repaired. And then I was at that kind of age where you're trying to decide, what do you want to do after you get out of high school? Are you going to college? And what are you going to study? And I decided to shadow his physical therapist. And I think I was a junior in high school, so 3rd year in high school at the time. And that was when I kind of got reintroduced a little bit older than when I was in 8th grade to, okay, I think this is a profession that would be cool to go into, because nobody enjoys being injured and missing out on the things that they love to do, whatever that is, right? Whether it's work or whether to support your family, whether it's activities and hobbies or playing with your kids or whatever that is. And so I got to shadow him. And then when I was a senior, I injured my knee in wrestling. And I missed a month, or about 6 weeks of my senior season of wrestling in high school. And I had to go back to physical therapy. And that was really what was the final kind of light switch moment, and really making the decision clear. All right, I'm going to go to physical therapy school. And then I made my college decision-making process kind of on that. Where can I go, study what I want to study, still play sports, because I wanted to continue playing sports, and also go to physical therapy school.
So it's a lot of this, it sounds like, from firsthand injury experience.
Yeah.
Your dad's rotator cuff injuries and surgeries. Was there something about the what a physical therapist would do and the way they go about doing their work that was also appealing, or was it just you really connected from an experience perspective, from an injury and a recovery perspective?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the thing back then that I maybe connected with the most was kind of that feeling of how disappointed or how down you can feel when that injury or something like that happens to you. And it's very easy to go into this thought process of why me? But then seeing the positivity that can come from coming out of that and getting back to the things that you love to do, what I didn't realize at the time when I was in middle school or high school that I realize now is one of the best parts about my job and career is that you just get to talk to people all day long, and you get to know them and get to know their stories. And it's way more about the person than it is about the issues or injuries that they're dealing with, right? It's more about the individual and the human that you're working with and connecting with. And I don't think I realized that early on before I truly started working and getting to know people better. So I think that's one of the things that's most interesting about it now.
Yeah, so that interaction and I completely resonate. As I shared on the podcast, I broke my hip playing soccer, also in my early 20s. And it was very much a mental thing to overcome, in addition to just the physical challenge of it, right? And I did also ask those questions, why me? The first question I asked was actually, am I going to be able to walk again? Played soccer all throughout high school and in university, and then to get this injury pretty much my first year working out of university and thinking about my whole life ahead, it's just mentally really weighing down on you. And I'm so grateful. Shout out to my physiotherapist, Katja Bergen, actually, who she was just the interaction and the vibe and also just the way she went about my recovery was so awesome. And
that's great.
So I understand that piece of that human interaction and overcoming that mental piece. So then you went into, you did your residency in orthopedics.
Right.
What drew you to orthopedics? Was it the fact of these injuries relating to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think even before I decided to go to physical therapy school, all throughout my childhood, going through elementary school, you would take these little questionnaires that kind of help guide you down a path of like, what are you going to do as your profession? And I would often, I would often like steer the answers to make the outcome be what I wanted it to be, right? I would always pick the answers that would make the result be like, you're going to become a professional athlete, right? I want to work on all 7 days of the week. It doesn't matter. I'll work at any time of the day. I love sports. And then the more I continued to play and whatnot, different sports in high school, the more I realized, okay, I'm probably not going to become a professional athlete, and that's okay. And I don't want that to just dominate my life anyways. So when I made the decision that I wanted to, one, go to physical therapy school, but then two, as I was getting ready to exit physical therapy school, and I made the decision to want to pursue a residency program, which is basically a 12 or more month like intensive kind of training, on the job training, where you're doing more research article reviews, you're doing more case studies, and trying to get specialized in an area, right? Orthopedics to me was more like working with just the normal person, right? The everyday individual, as opposed to going down a specialty that was sport specific or geriatric specific or pediatric specific. Orthopedics to me just felt like the largest bucket that would give me the largest exposure to working with like the most people that are just like you and me.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then from there you come in, you joined Physio Room.
Yeah.
And you've been here for how long?
5 years. We're coming up on my 5-year anniversary in about a week or 2 weeks.
Wow. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about Physio Room and
Yeah, and even before joining Physio Room, I spent the first 5 years of my career working for another practice, kind of a more what we'll call traditional practice that's very insurance driven. It's it's higher volume. You're working with more people per day, but you don't get quite as much one-on-one interaction with them.
Okay.
And a lot of that is driven by the healthcare system as a whole, not necessarily by that company or by that entity. So then through my sister-in-law, actually, through some family, that was part of the reason we decided to move out here. That's how I got connected with Physio Room. And at the time, Physio Room was about 1 year old when I got introduced to it. And, after a couple months of talking with our owner, Chris, decided that my wife, Erin, and I, we were going to move out here to Colorado, half for family reasons and sort of half to take this opportunity. Joined Physio Room. We had like one small little practice, or one small little location, in the south part of Denver, South Highlands Ranch area. And then we came into this facility, Physio Room, I believe, had 4 people on the team when I joined, and now we've multiplied that by 4.
Wow.
And we have other locations and whatnot, and our team has just grown tremendously. But at the end of the day, it's a quality over quantity based physical therapy, performance physical therapy practice that's trying to challenge the status quo of what the traditional healthcare experience is like, right? We're trying to put people first, not treat them like their condition, but treat them like who they are as people. And, we're trying to give them an experience from a physical therapy standpoint that is far different than what they would get at the average office.
Gotcha.
In terms of experience and in terms of like what they actually get back to doing.
Yeah, and related to that is the launch of the Code podcast.
Oh, yeah, that was fun.
Because that is different. So the Code podcast seems to be related with physiotherapy, with Physio Room, but it's also standing on its own.
Yeah.
In a sense. How did that come about, and what really is the Code podcast all about?
Oh man, that's a great question. Even before joining Physio Room, I started to get kind of this itch or this desire to like start some form of like an educational outlet, educational platform of something. And I started listening to podcasts. This was probably in 2019 or so. And I wanted to actually start a podcast at the previous practice that I was with. But the practice wasn't on board with it. They were like, well, we don't really see how this is going to move the needle, going to bring in revenue or anything to our practice, which is very large, right? It wasn't just like the one location that I was at. It's a national practice. So, I understand that, but I still wanted to do it. But I didn't really know what to do, nor did I want to, understand the costs and things that went into running a podcast. So then I joined Physio Room, and of course the first goal was like, well, I need to get my schedule full with clients and whatnot so that we can pay the bills and whatnot. So then I start talking with Chris, and we decide like, we're going to start a podcast, and we're trying to put the pieces in place of, okay, who's going to do it? What equipment are we going to use? Who's going to edit it? Is this going to be a lot of solo episodes? Are we going to interview people? And what we settled on was that I was going to run the podcast. Physio Room, like you said, it's kind of like connected to Physio Room, but it also has its own identity. Physio Room provides the financial support to make the podcast happen. And we decided that we were going to utilize somebody else's skill set to edit it.
Okay.
Right? Rather than me learning how to edit and do that, just because that's not anywhere near my expertise. And that was one of the holdups. Like, it probably took us a year longer to actually record the first episode because we were trying to figure out like who's going to edit it, how much time is this going to take, and then we finally decided just to outsource it and hire somebody else to do that. But the goal of the Code, one, is education to our larger outreach of people than what we could possibly talk to on a daily basis. And we want to dive into like the key areas that really impact people's health and wellness and longevity, more so than like what we can just do in physical therapy. So this is things like managing your stress. This is things like the importance of sleep, the nutrition and what we put in our body, of course, the movement and exercise piece, and then the relationships and the community aspect and how impactful those can be, for better or worse, on just on somebody's quality of life and quality of being.
Yeah, it totally makes sense because obviously your reach and your impact is only really limited to who you can interact with in your practice.
Yeah.
And it totally makes sense to have this podcast to educate and scale that message. And there's a lot of really interesting episodes. And I think
it's been fun to do.
Yeah, we came much later, but just looking at the list, there's just so many different topics that are really holistic and well-rounded. It's not sort of siloed in one specific topic.
Oh, sure.
Right, which is really cool. So education is clearly a big part of what you consider important.
Yeah.
I also read that you're a mobility trainer with the Ready State.
Yeah.
You assist with some continuing education efforts, right? So education, why has education been important for you? And how would you say that it's shaped the way that you do your practice as a clinician?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, I think education and people obtaining more knowledge and information is just so important, because I think what used to be the case in healthcare was like you would just go, or an individual would go to their physician's office, ask them questions, the physician would give them an answer or whatever they think, and then that was it. Like you just listen to what your doctor says, you do what they say, you take the medications that they instruct you and prescribe you to take, without really understanding why, or understanding what it does, or understanding like the deeper purpose behind these things. And what I think we're shifting to is people want to be knowledgeable about like what's going on with their own health. And I like to use the phrase like it is each of our responsibilities to be the CEO of our own health journey and the CEO of our own life. It's not your doctor's responsibility to take care of you. It's your responsibility to take care of you. And they're a great resource and a guide that you can consult with, but they're not you. They can't take care of you. You have to do that for yourself. And so I think that's where kind of the desire to educate and provide people with information, some that they can take and use, and some that maybe they can take and leave, and maybe they don't want that at that time. But it's to just empower people to take hold of their own health journey and be the CEO of that. And sometimes in our offices, like when we're having an appointment with a client, sometimes that is way more talking than it is physically doing things, because the challenge that they might be facing might not be that we need to put our hands on them and help them with knee pain. It might be that they're struggling and they're only getting 4 hours of sleep a night, and we need to help them navigate the obstacles and the barriers in their day or their weekly life to figure out how we can address that piece of the puzzle. And that doesn't require us, exercising or doing things to work on physical pains that they're dealing with. It's lifestyle navigation, or stress management, or maybe it's connecting them with a community group or something that will impact their life in a different way. So sometimes our sessions are more talking than it is, doing.
Yeah, the whole, focus on the individual is really interesting, I think, and it ties in very well with the need for education.
Yeah.
Like if you take a template approach and you say you have this injury and therefore you should do this thing to solve that injury, that's a lot less impactful than actually understanding the individual and the nuances, and then equipping them with that information and that knowledge to carry on that benefit and improvement in their lives.
For sure.
So one thing that people really struggle with, and this is part of the problem that we are trying to solve here at Movemate, is how do we get people to be more active, and how do we get them to stick to that? And you've been obviously very active, right? You've played varsity in university. You're still very active today. So for people who are just getting started, struggling to maintain that level of activity in their lives, what advice would you give those individuals to get started and also stay consistent on that activity path?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you 100%. I think so many of the health issues, physically, mentally, emotionally, inside our body, with our tissues and joints, like all of the above, can boil down to lack of activity. And I don't think it's a surprise when we think about it from that lens to see that many of the preventable health challenges that much of the industrialized world is facing continues to get worse and worse and worse as our world becomes more technology focused and more sedentary when we're working on the computer or on our phones and whatnot, or sitting in cars. So we need to move. At the end of the day, we need to move. We need to move more than what we are now. And each person just needs to start where they're at. I think where sometimes people can kind of get themselves in trouble is when they start comparing to what somebody else is doing, or comparing to what this picture is of what they expect or what they think they should be doing or should be able to do. We just need to start where we're at. And whatever your activity level is, we just need to take it just that one next step farther, right? That might just mean going for a walk each day. That might mean doing a few sets of air squats throughout your workday just to try to get more activity. And for someone that already is very active, well, that might look very different. But you definitely can't go from point A to point B, C, and D overnight. We need to gradually progress to get there and allow our body to adapt and change along the way.
I think that's the right kind of messaging, and so I took this from physiotherapists. Well,
Yeah.
my physiotherapist, she always used to say your next posture is your best posture.
Yeah, I love that.
And we've taken that and try to make it Movemate, and we say your next move is your best move.
You know what? Didn't we? I think we named the podcast episode something like "Your next posture is your best."
Yes.
I think that's the title of our episode.
Yes,
that
we did,
Yeah.
and it captures it perfectly. But also from an approach perspective, you know, this idea that yes, literally your next posture is your best posture,
Yeah.
but also your next move is your best move, meaning that, you know, you don't have to go 5 moves ahead.
Right.
You know, you can focus on a small goal and a small improvement, and then just stick to that and just stack that on. And like you said, everyone is at a different point with different histories and different goals.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. And so one thing that obviously is inherent to our product, but also is becoming big in general, is this idea of foot function and natural movement. So you've been wearing barefoot shoes now for how long?
For a while. I mean, the very first experience that I had with like a barefoot style shoe, wider toe box, flatter, was actually back in 2015. And honestly, the reason that I bought those particular shoes, which were limbs, like we were just talking about a little bit ago, was because I found them on a discount at a store, and I was like, oh, these shoes look good, they're comfortable, and they were discounted down. You know, it was a cheaper price. I was in my first year out of physical therapy school, so I was trying to save some money, pay off those student loans.
For sure.
And so then, honestly, for no reason other than looks and aesthetics, I didn't continue to wear those shoes because I wasn't bought in and didn't understand fully the benefits of like continuing to stick down that pathway. So then probably about 5 or so years ago is when I really switched back and have just made a complete 180 and like won't go back now. Like I have to keep wearing the barefoot, wider toe box style shoes, just because I just find them so much more comfortable. My foot can do the things that it is meant to do. It can splay, it can feel the ground, and now I've like completely shifted my whole wardrobe from a shoe standpoint to be all those shoes.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm almost there. I'm like 50% of the way.
Yep.
I'm still in the transition phase. But on that note, obviously the whole movement of barefoot shoes or minimal footwear is really underpinned by this movement towards understanding the feet and foot health. How would you describe, for someone who is not, you know, privy to barefoot shoes or foot health in general, who's not even thinking about their feet really, how would you describe to them the importance of the feet in the way that we move, in our performance, in our ability to sidestep injury? What would be your take on that?
I mean, I like to use the analogy of a house or a building and just any structure, right? It could be your home, it could be your office building. If it doesn't have a solid, strong foundation, it doesn't really matter what's on top. That's going to eventually crumble at some point if the foundation is not solid and strong. That's why that's the part that they build first, and that's the part that they make sure they get right before they start layering in all the other layers. And I think the same thing is true about our body. If your foundation is faulty, you're going to start to have issues farther up the chain. And it works the other way too, right? From a body standpoint. But like you said, many people are not thinking about their feet. But our feet, our hands, the skin on our lips are some of the areas in our body that have the most sensitivity from like a nerve standpoint. Those are the parts of our body that we interact with the world with, right? We can feel things very specific, very detailed on our hands, our feet, and on the skin on our lips. And I was actually just on a walk with our son Aiden this morning, and it was a little bit breezy outside. The temperature was in the low 60s Fahrenheit, and so I decided to put socks on him. He's taking them off immediately, right? He wants to have his feet free so that he can feel and experience things. When you watch him walk, he's learning how to walk right now. If he's barefoot, his confidence, his ability to walk without falling over, without taking awkward steps where he nearly falls, is so much better than if we put shoes on him, or even if we put socks on him. His ability to walk is hindered. So it's like, we see the same thing with adults too, right? We have them balance. Basically everybody is better at balancing when they have no shoes and no socks on, and they can feel the ground with their feet. So I think it's, you could do yourself a big favor just by paying a little bit of attention to your feet and not taking them for granted. Because having had a lot of different injuries, hips, knees, things we've talked about before, having some feet injuries, there's not a lot of things that negatively impact our quality of life and being able to do things than if you have something wrong with your foot. It just completely hinders your ability to do anything that you want to do because you can't get around.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that analogy because it's one that's easy to understand.
Yeah, right.
It's just intuitive that if you have a weak foundation, then that will create problems up the chain in this case, or in a building. That would create some serious problems.
Yeah, and one other thing on that, so many times the proposed solution to a problem with our foundation is something artificial, right? An orthotic or a shoe to try and correct something that's going wrong. But most cases, we weren't born with that problem. Like, we didn't have that until we grew up, we sat at desks, we wore shoes that maybe weren't good for our feet. And our body has the ability to heal and rectify that if we just give it the opportunity to do it.
Right.
Like, your body's wanting to try to bring itself back to that strong foundation.
Right.
We don't need to necessarily always correct it and intervene with artificial things. There's a time and a place for those things, don't get me wrong. But I don't think it should be the only solution.
Yeah. And coming back to sedentary lifestyles.
Yeah.
So, a lot of what we preach is this idea of, the need to move more. And for me personally, it was, I desperately needed to move more because I was recovering from my hip injury when I was working at a desk all day. And then I was introduced.
Not moving. Yeah.
And then I was introduced to Movemate. And so, from then on, movement has become everything we do. And now look at me, this is our whole life. But how would you describe, there's a lot of people out there, probably even sitting at a desk listening to this.
Yeah.
How would you, that maybe don't yet see that problem, that they might see later on because of that lifestyle. But what's that relationship between just having a sedentary desk job or lifestyle and how that affects the body, and what would be your take on how you describe that?
I mean, I could take this
So many
question a number of different ways.
Yeah.
One of the first things that comes to mind is I just, speaking of the podcast, I just recorded an episode on something called NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This idea or this concept of like doing activity throughout our day that is not your planned or structured exercise that helps burn so many calories throughout your day, like what we're doing now, right? We're moving around, we're standing as opposed to sitting still at a desk or sitting on a couch. And that contributes to such a high percentage, 15 to 30% of the calories that we can burn in a day. Wow. So if we want to take this from like a metabolic disease or a health and wellness standpoint, I mean, just moving more, we can fight off obesity and so many of the challenges that the world deals with. So I think that's one. I mean, I think too, we talked about your next posture is your best posture, your next move is your best move. The body is designed to move. The body is not designed to sit still. And anyone listening to this, the longer you sit still in one position, the more uncomfortable you start to get, and naturally your body will want to shift, right? If you're sitting on an airplane, you're gonna move, you're gonna fidget, or if you're sitting at your desk or on the couch, you're going to move. That's one of the reasons why we shift and move when we're asleep, when we toss and turn in the middle of the night. It's because our body's getting uncomfortable in that position, and it wants the next one. It wants you to change. That's the same reason why there are turning schedules when somebody's in a hospital or a nursing home and they are bedbound. We can't just leave them in the same position because they're going to start to have skin breakdowns and things. We have to get that person moving. Our tissues are designed to move. The joints, the tissues, our mood, our energy, everything will be healthier if we can just move a little bit more.
Everything gets better when we move more.
Everything gets better when we move, yeah.
And what do you recommend for? Obviously, I'd love to get your take on Movemate.
Yeah,
you've had it for a while, but even aside from Movemate, what do you recommend to patients that you see who have a desk job? Is it just take a walk every so often? How do you position that to them to make it feasible for them to get more movement in?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what I don't try to do is take the individual who is sitting for 8 to 10 hours a day and try to convince them to go completely the other direction. Right. And try to get them to stand all day long. Because if you just stand still all day long, you'll still be uncomfortable. You still need to move. And that's often, that would be a really tough sell for somebody. They're like, well, I can't do that. So first, especially depending on their situation, like they may not have a desk that goes from sit to stand, which most people can get one of those relatively easily nowadays, whether you buy it or your company buys it for you.
Right.
But it's just to try to get that person to increase the movement a little bit. And I like to use the term movement snacks throughout the day, right? We'll snack on food. We can also snack with movement. So that doesn't mean you have to go for a 20-minute walk for every hour that you're at the desk, but it just means, like, usually what I use is the 30 and 2. 30 minutes of activity on your computer, 2 minutes of moving around, right? That could be walking to the restroom, walking to grab a drink or a bite to eat. That could be standing up from your desk, just getting some movement in, doing some
stretches.
Squats. Yeah, just something. 30 minutes of sedentary to 2 minutes of movement. And if we can do that, well, then it starts to lend itself to doing even more. That's one of the reasons why I like having a workstation that you can stand at, and that's
gives you the option.
Exactly. It just lends itself to being a little bit more feasible. Like you're more naturally going to shift and move around when you're standing than when you're sitting. So that's what I find. Whether I'm using the board or not, I'm going to move more when I'm standing.
Right.
And I'm going to raise up onto my toes or rock back onto my heels. And then, if you have the board,
right.
It's like you're in this almost constant state of motion, which is kind of cool because, like, you could stand still, but then you're having to work just a little bit, right, to stabilize. Your hips are engaged, your trunk and your core is engaged. But just like we've been doing, like, you're going to just naturally move around more because you're on something that is mobile.
Right.
And it introduces a lot of variety.
Yeah.
To your stance.
What benefits have you seen now that you've used it for quite some time? How there's a lot of people who are looking to Movemate for the first time and thinking, okay, it's a bit of a tool that you maybe have to adapt to, or you have to integrate now into your lifestyle.
Yep.
And they're wondering, is it worth it?
Sure.
So what benefits, how would you describe what you've experienced with Movemate? Things you've noticed, how you feel, or...
Yeah, I think the main thing that I've noticed the most is I tend to be a person that struggles. We were talking about this a little bit ago, that struggles to sit still.
Right.
And it actually gives me, especially if I'm on a virtual meeting or something, I think it actually helps me pay attention and focus better on the individual that I'm talking with. Or even if I'm working on something, I think it helps me focus better because it gives me something to occupy my desire to fidget and to move, as opposed to, playing with a fidget tool or something like that, or tapping my foot or something that people will do, right? They'll do that all the time just to kind of occupy this desire to move,
right?
Because, like I said, our bodies want to move; they don't want to just sit still. So I think that's one. I think two, the learning curve is not as steep as you might think it is, right? I think if you have really poor balance, you might step on this and initially feel a little unsteady. But especially if you're using, like, we're standing here not holding on to anything.
I'm not even thinking about it.
Right. Especially if you're standing near your desk, like, you've always got something to kind of hold on to, right? The balance, you could always step off,
right,
if you need to.
Easy,
right?
Get on, get off.
And I think that's one of the things I like about it too, is I actually think it makes the accessibility of getting on and off easier because it moves in so many different ways. Whereas I haven't really used many of the other ones, but I've stood on some other standing boards. I haven't used them, meaning like I haven't owned them, but they don't move in as many different planes, different directions. So, like, you can't get on it all the different ways. Like, you could get on this one by tipping it back.
Right.
You could tip it sideways.
Get a little stretch in.
You could have them opposite ways. That's what I'll do sometimes, is just like a little stretch of the calf.
Right.
Working.
Right.
So I just like that it's so variable.
Right.
And it
That's a good
moves
one.
in all the different directions.
That's a pretty good stretch.
Yeah.
Ali does that a lot.
Yeah.
He's always like this as well, and then he'll do like some calf raises too.
Yep. And I haven't even used it in this manner, really.
Yeah.
Just because we have other tools that we could do this. But, like, you could use it kind of as a slant board modification.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's just a lot of things you could do.
Also, you could just, like, squat on it.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
Like, just get some slight movement in as you squat. Yeah, we've both had hip surgeries, and here we are squatting.
That's right. Yeah, got to get back to doing the things. I think it's it's a really cool tool. I probably spend, I'd like to say I'm pretty 50-50.
Okay.
Standing at the desk versus sitting at the desk.
Okay.
And I would say I probably use the standing board 50% of the time that I stand at the desk. I don't
Gotcha.
use it all the time.
So
'cause
like
sometimes
25% of your workday.
I would say so. Yeah, probably somewhere in that range. I always just keep it right under there
Yeah.
so that it's easy to pull out and grab. Pretty much like I said, whenever I'm on a virtual meeting, I'm almost always using it because I find it helps me
Focus.
stay engaged and stay
Yeah.
focused. I mean, I definitely will notice when I'm on the board compared to when I'm not.
Yeah.
I get fewer of those like signals from my body that like something's starting to bother me, right? Like you might be on a long car ride and your back starts to hurt, or you might be sitting at your computer for a while and your neck or your shoulder starts to bother you. When I'm on the board, I don't get those as much. And I think it's just because you're constantly varying your position and you're moving around, and it's helping blood flow. It's activating your feet, it's activating your core. And I don't get those just like nagging little annoyances throughout the day.
Yeah, yeah. And also on the point of 25% of usage,
Yep.
like it's also what we recommend.
yeah.
Not particularly 25%, but you know we're telling folks you don't need to use this all day.
Sure.
This is not a all or nothing situation.
Yeah.
And your next posture is your best posture applies to this as well.
Yeah.
So you know, sit, stand, move on the board.
Yeah.
There's even ground sitting options.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? So, and the idea is to break it apart, coming back to what you said, like you're 30 minutes sat and then 2 minutes moving.
Right.
The whole idea there to me is like you're constantly, regularly switching your position and getting movement in throughout the day, as opposed to, you know, sit all day and then hit the gym hard.
Totally. Yeah.
Right.
That's something that I think once you explain it in that kind of way, or like once the person starts to feel and experience it, they totally get it. But I think so many people think that we can negate or cancel out this long period of static with just going to the gym for 30 or 60 minutes. And that
Right.
is just not a fact. You just can't do that.
Right.
You can't sit still for the majority of your day, move for a small portion of your day, and expect that your body is not going to continue to lose mobility over time, especially if we're not moving in the ranges of motion that our joints have access to. If we don't use that, we're not going to have it for long. Like we're going to lose it.
Use it or lose it.
I mean, that phrase doesn't just stick around because it's not true. It's true. So yeah, you have to utilize the range of motion and the capacity that your joints have. And, you know, it could be as simple as just moving more throughout the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the future as we wrap up. What are you excited about, or what is Physio Room looking forward to, you know, accomplishing in the near future, and even the Code podcast?
Yeah.
You know, what's your vision on that, and how do you see it unfolding?
Yeah, you know, I love being asked that question, and I think relating it to the code, for whatever reason, feels a little bit harder for me to answer. I know the answer right away when it comes to Physio Room. Our vision, we just changed this about 2 years ago. Our vision is to help the world move better, one person at a time. And we've talked with a couple people who were considering joining our practice, or maybe even were on our team, and they felt like, wow, isn't that like too big? Help the world move better? How is Physio Room going to help the world move better?
It's a good question.
When we're just here in this Denver area. But the reason that we really love it is that there's no cap on it. There's no end point on it. We're going to continue interacting with one person at a time, and that's going to be in person, that's going to be digitally, that's going to be remotely, that's going to be through other people. That's going to be us talking to one client, and then they go talk to their friends and family, and by way of them, we're helping those other individuals, and we're going to try to help the world move better, one person at a time. So that's what our vision is there. I mean, we're continuing to try to add more and more great talent, great individuals to our team that can help more people in the community. Of course, we're local here to the Colorado area, the South Denver, the Colorado Springs area. We're hoping to expand and grow into larger flagship, like phenomenal facilities, right? We want our facilities to be a place that people want to come to, and that they feel, you know, very impressed and like, wow, this is a place where I know I'm going to get the standard of care that I've come to expect from from a place like Physio Room. You know, nothing says that we are tied strictly to Colorado, right? If we, you know, we don't really plan to do this, but like if my family and I wanted to relocate, Well, we would probably open up a Physio Room somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or if we have another team member joins our team who then wants to move somewhere else, maybe they help us expand. And then we do much of our business happens in person, but we do have a small digital arm and remote
Oh, you do?
arm to our practice.
Okay.
It's relatively small, but we hope to see that grow in the future so that we can impact people's lives that are not just here. And of course, if the person's not a good fit to work with us digitally because they're looking for somebody in person, we've got a huge network and we connect people with other great practitioners in other states and even other countries sometimes.
I love that vision because yes, it is very grand.
Yep.
But if you don't see yourself in that way, then you naturally may not think about all the different ways. I remember someone once telling me about, transport. This is a bit different, but about transportation companies. Companies that were operating railways, rail transportation back in the days. Yeah. If they thought of themselves as just taking goods from one location to the next, and that's what they do, then the way they see their future and how they evolve and compete is very different and may not even last as long as another goods transportation company that thinks of themselves of, we want to connect people in different parts. Yeah. We want to, it opens it up. And I think the Code podcast ties in really well because you may not have that direct digital or physical interaction, but there's thousands of people who are listening to your interviews and your podcast episodes, and they're learning and they take away one nugget that they improve in their lives, and there you go, they're moving better. Someone in our home country of Kenya, listening to this. So I love that. Now, my final question is, all of this we've talked about and all of your experience in this field, if there's like one takeaway that you would want people to sort of understand about movement, about health, what would that be?
Oof. Yeah, that's a big question. If there's one takeaway that I would want people to know, I think the thing that comes to mind right away is just never stop learning, right? Like, don't just do what someone told you to do just because they told you to do it. Like, you need to understand why, understand the concept. Going through physical therapy school and whatnot, there were a lot of my classmates and things who were really good at tests because they would memorize stuff and they would knock out the answers to the questions on the exam. And I was just never that person. I was someone who I really deeply wanted to understand the concept behind the things that we were learning, and then I could figure my way out to the answer, right? And if there ever was an exam that was, list the 7 things, and it really required memorization, that's not usually what I did really well on. And I think in today's world, with all the technology and stuff that we have, we don't have to be good memorizers of information. The information is out there. We need to be good digesters of that information and figure out how we can take it and apply it to our life to impact the change that we're looking for. So I think that's what I would say is, there's no secret sauce in terms of you have to exercise this many days a week or you have to eat this food. It's there's so many different ways that you can get yourself to the outcome that you're looking for, but you have to be curious and never stop learning in order for that to be true.
I love that. Yeah. It's learning with a purpose.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Andrew. It's been really nice talking to you, and I'm sure that a lot of people listening, watching this, are going to take away at least one piece of helpful information.
I hope so.
And here you go. Together we are helping the world move better, one person at a time.
Love that.
Awesome.
That. Go listen to the code, you guys.
Listen to the code indeed. And listen to our episode on the code too.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Nice.